Bonjour tout le monde.
Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, I'm not going to be presenting Common Josephat. I talked about that yesterday, but I'm going to introduce the Land Trust Brussels. The history of this, we started in 2008, and we took a lot of inspiration from the community land trust movement in the US, where the principle has been applicable since the beginning of the 70s. In Brussels, the housing crisis has worsened a great deal over the last few years, and in less than 10 years, the price of housing has doubled. In Brussels, only 8% of the available housing is social housing, whereas 1/4 of the population live below the poverty threshold. So it is a high time to move on to action, and that is how several citizens and associations have pushed for the CLT model to be accepted by the government. And at the end of 2012, the government recognized and supported us. The basic principle of the CLT is to guarantee once and for all access to housing for the most fragile people, those with the lowest incomes. And the principle is that the land is separated from the building on it. So the owners acquire the lodgings, but the land under it remains the property of the trust. And the anti-speculative mechanisms we've set up means that the subsidies are locked in, and any profits, if the housing is sold, is turned over to the trust. There's a tripartite structure to it. All of the decisions in the trust are made by 1/4 inhabitants, 1/4 civil society, and one third rather of each inhabitants, civil society, and government. We fought hard for this. And after a few years' experience, we're seeing the fruit of our labors. We now manage to see a worker sitting down at a table who comes from an immigrant background, sitting down with a government minister, and it leads to very interesting exchanges. What's important to talk about when you talk about this 3/3 aspect is that there are certain parties in our government who call into question this principle. So we still have to work on convincing them of the benefits of this principle. And in all of our activities and our work, we spend a lot of time on this tripartite management approach, and we try to involve the three parties as much as we can. In particular, getting the inhabitants involved by providing them with a significant role, not just within our board of administration, but also the whole procedure which takes them through to their housing. As when we buy land, we propose a group, and we propose a project which lasts about 5 years. Today, 3 or 4 years after we started, we have 6 projects underway, which represent about 85 lodgings. And the challenges we're facing today is to try and expand at the Brussels level as a housing player. And the interest in the CLT continues to increase. In terms of people interested in owning property. We still have some work to do to convince our own government. However, very recently we had a governmental decision which calls into question somewhat all of our basic principles. So we have a few weeks of hard fight ahead of us. What's rather strange is, on the other hand, other housing operators who've been around for several years in Brussels are starting to integrate some of the principles from the CLT. They work with the members. They try to support the inhabitants throughout the whole process of acquiring the housing. They do everything except having the inhabitant be involved in the decision-making procedure. That's still not integrated, so we still have some work to do on that. At the European level, we are part of a very large movement which is growing, where there are several CLTs being created across Europe, and there are other interesting housing cooperatives involved in order to create a new type of city. And I think it's important that we try to reinforce this network and devote the necessary means to do so. Thank you.